Remember Emerald City? I believe we just got confirmation that it's real. Either that or Saturn is Bonnie's dad, and there's no in between. So let's try to get there in the shortest amount of time possible. But we're in the end game, and it's been a decade-long journey, and all the pieces are starting to fall in place because we're trying to find the one piece and put all the pieces together to make the one piece. That was for free. But a brilliant writer like Oda would not reveal all of his cards at once, and that's why even now he's planting new seeds like Greenbow, clues and mysteries, all of that. One of which I just happened to catch in chapter 1098. I've done the research, and this chapter really has so much more hidden inside it than we all thought. And it all comes back to the sapphire scale, or should I rather say the jade scale disease. Yeah, jade scale. Stick with me on this one because you are in for one hell of a story. Now you might say, Brago, how can we trust you as a storyteller? Well, let me tell you a story. It goes back 3 eons ago when, actually don't care. All right, back to One Piece. One Piece is a Japanese manga series, and it's written in Japanese and translated for us. And because Japanese is such a different language, the meaning can get lost in translation. Or as it happened before in the story, Oda can deliberately hide the meaning in Japanese, which also makes it wrong in English. The prime example of this is Laugh Tale, the final island, which was translated as Raftel all the way till the Oden flashback. The reason for this is because of how Oda writes certain names in kanji. And one thing we all know about Oda by now is that he loves Shanks. Actually, that's the wrong one. He loves his wordplay, okay? It's everywhere. From bounty numbers to names to puns to dates. Look at Zoro's bounty. It's 1111. No real thought behind it other than, well, it's his birthday. I went to the source and checked out chapter 1098 in Japanese, and what I found blew my mind. The first time we get a name for the disease is when Dragon sends his best doctor to take a look at Bonnie, who got the same illness as Ginny, and he describes it with 2 kanji letters, and in the English translation it's called blue stones, but that same kanji can be translated as green stones. So then that got me to thinking, would there be a reason why they would be called green stones instead? And that's when I turned to the various gemstones and their history with Asian folklore, and it hit me. What if those are jade stones? Oda ties it into many different mythologies while writing One Piece, from Kuma holding a Bible to Alabast's ties to Norse mythology, to the link between Luffy and Momo and Yamato in the Japanese tale of Momotaro. There's a clear connection. So what would jade and the jade disease represent? Well, the ancient Chinese believe that solar eclipses occur when a legendary celestial dragon eats the sun. I know he's a bit crazy, but that's what they believe. And wouldn't you know it, the celestial dragon had scales that are the color of jade. Any of this tingling your spidey senses yet? Because for me, I'm pretty cold over here, okay? For me, this is a big red flag that something was up. And I'm not just talking about me and Boa Hancock's private quarters, okay? I'm talking about Luffy, the sun god, is fighting against the corrupt world government, which is being led by the individuals who call themselves the Celestial Dragons, and their aim is to neutralize this threat known as the sun god Nika, which would destroy the metaphorical sun and cause, well, a solar eclipse. Now, for all of you dear skeptics who are already typing in the comments furiously asking, why would Oda make a link with ancient China specifically? Well, I'm glad to tell you that this isn't the first time Oda's made a connection between celestial dragons and China. In chapter 908, we see Kuma for the first time since Sabaody, and being turned into a mindless, emotionless cyborg, he was branded as the ultimate slave and ridden by Saint Charles' father, Saint Roswald. I even heard, and this is unconfirmed, so don't hold me to my word, okay? But I even heard that they were calling Kuma by his new epithet, Kuma the Stallion, in Mariejois. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's what I heard. Either way, if you look at the panel where it says sapphire disease, you take that kanji and pop it in to translate, but for Chinese instead of Japanese, you guessed it, green jade scales. Boom. To me, that was the big proof that I needed. That's it. It's believable now. But also, considering that Oda likes taking inspiration from other cultures, not saying he's a culture vulture or anything, but would it be so surprising to see him take elements from one of the oldest civilizations of all time, which is also one of Japan's neighbors in the real world? I mean, I steal from my neighbor all the time. But if you were to say that Oda is really talking about jades rather than sapphires, and this is the jade disease, what would that mean for the story, Brago? Because you're just going on and on about jade and blue and green. It's starting to feel like it came out of the blue. It did not, okay? Because my theory is that Ginny did not get this disease from being abused, no, but rather from exposure, similarly to the other big disease that appears in the story, Law's white lead disease. So first, let's take a look at the history of white lead disease and see if we can draw any parallels, okay? It all started with the discovery of a new ore called amber lead. This ore had a special property to it, which made the soil and plants that surrounded it turn a beautiful shade of white, just like in a fairy tale. or Anne Hathaway's beautiful skin. Either way, it was thanks to this that amber lead became a precious material, and the people of the Flavans Kingdom, the country where law was born, created huge mining operations, excavating as much of it as possible. So thanks to this, the once poor kingdom became a prosperous and rich country. But what people chose to overlook in their greed was the disastrous side effects of prolonged exposure to amber lead ore. When in contact with the skin, the deadly poison would destroy the body from the inside, as well as shorten the lifespan of future generations, making the disease show up much earlier in their children's lives. I don't know about you, but this sounds pretty familiar to me. So my theory is that Ginny, as a slave in Mariejois, was forced to do manual labor and excavate jade ore for the celestial dragons. Of course, as a slave, her life would be seen as worthless and meaningless. She wouldn't be given any protective gear as she is expendable to them. So because of the mining, Ginny eventually contracted the jade scale disease, and by contact, Bonnie got exposed to it as well. But as an offspring of an infected person, her tolerance was lower. Just like me when I don't drink for a long time. One shot and it's all open, baby. But just like white lead, she got infected faster. This would also explain another great mystery we've had about the celestial dragons since we saw them for the first time: their outfits. I'm not talking about how bad they look. I'm talking about the bubbles on their heads and what they're meant for. They're there because celestial dragons don't want to breathe the same air as regular people, or at least that's what we thought. But what about the suits? They take off their bubbles when they're in Mariejois, but they still wear their suits. You would think that greedy, shallow celestial dragons would want to distinguish themselves by wearing fancy clothes, like at the Met Gala, but I mean, just look at the Drip King Doflamingo. But even in Mariejois, they still keep their suits on, almost as if they were wearing radiation suits meant for protection. Now, if that were the case, we would have to ask ourselves why the celestial dragons would even want this jade, especially if it was a poisonous material. And I have 3 possible answers to that question. The first answer ties back to the ancient Chinese celestial dragon. If you were to follow that trail, we could say that jade is supposed to be a weapon that the world government can use against the sun god in order to cause a solar eclipse, aka defeat him. Heck, since the dragon has scales of jade, they might even plan on making some sort of armor from jade that could help them against the powers of the sun god. Imagine an army of jade soldiers falling down onto Luffy. That would be pretty wild. But the second option comes from what jade symbolizes in those same ancient Chinese texts. Jade symbolizes nobility and wealth and is considered by many to be the gem supreme and the jewel of heaven. Wouldn't it be such a good tie-in if the celestial dragons were driven by the same kind of greed as the people of the Flavans Kingdom, destined to perish because of their nature? Celestial dragons, they ain't nothing. Celestial dragons ain't shit. Right? They live high up on top of the red line as if they were in heaven in order to distance themselves from the commoners down below. They would absolutely love the so-called jewel of heaven, which represents the nobility and wealth, everything that makes them special. I mean, damn it, they went to God Valley because it had resources. I think low-key is because it was being called God Valley as well. They want to monopolize it, have it all for themselves, and make it a mark of their status. This really happened multiple times throughout history, and it never ended particularly well. So this could be Oda's way of hinting at us the reason for the celestial dragon's downfall, other than Dragon, once he finally does something. But it's the same as the downfall of any civilization: human greed. But lastly, this brings us to the third option, and this is a combination of the first two. This one is pretty simple. For the regular celestial dragons who know nothing, jade could symbolize their status, whilst the higher ranked figures such as the Gorosei, Imu, and possibly God Knights such as Garling could also know about another special property of jade, one that would let them defeat their greatest foe. So following this theory, after you listen to me ramble for this long, the next natural question would be, where is the jade being excavated? Mariejois, maybe, but I think there's a better connection. A mythical place only mentioned in One Piece legends. Let me take you back in time real quick. 20 years ago, there was a strange land called the year 2002. I know, for most of you, you don't even know what that is. There were almost 2 billion less of us on the planet. Okay, people were still arguing whether or not the start of the new millennia was the year 2000 or 2001. But I digress. We still watch TV though. It was a weird time, I know, but it was also a year when one Eiichiro Oda released a new arc from his Little Pirate manga called the Jaya arc. Man, I can't believe Jaya was so long ago. Makes me feel, I'm not even gonna say it. Anyways, in this arc, amongst many mythical places, Bellamy's first mate Sarkis mentions the Emerald City. And while Emerald isn't exactly the same as Jade, they're both considered precious gems. They're both similar shades of green and represent wealth. The city could have been misbranded long ago, or maybe the name will be revealed to be Jade City all along. Who knows? So the full story would be that a long time ago, the celestial dragons discovered a precious stone called jade on an island, which was later dubbed the Emerald City. To them, it represented a sign of their extreme wealth, and they wanted to take it all for themselves, like the government and taxes. But then they discovered that the material was poisonous when touched and made suits that would protect them from exposure in their homeland. Sounds like the 80s. Okay, I'm not going any further. They proceeded to annex the Emerald City, just like how they annexed God Valley for its resources, and started sending unprotected slaves to mine away for them, letting them contract the Jade disease, which killed them off as soon as they were let go. This cycle continued on, and as nobody was allowed on the island, to the rest of the world, it became a place of myth and legend, which only existed in fairy tales. Since people had no access to Jade throughout the centuries, the Jade scale disease became forgotten, as the only people who had it lived on Mariejois and died as soon as they were let go. That, together with the technological regression, which only Vegapunk is getting close to fixing, is a reason why nobody knows how to cure the disease. Now, since we have discovered the connection between Jade and celestial dragons, let's turn to one final mystery revealed to us by our good old bird man, Doflamingo. Gotta put some respect on his name.
Put some respect on.
But Dofi mentions the great treasure of Mariejois after he gets captured by the Marines, and after that we get no further hints as to what that treasure is. If we took the first theory of Jade being a weapon as true, there could very well be a vault hidden on top of the Red Line in which they keep a large quantity of Jade, collected through the centuries as a way to defeat Joy Boy if he ever returned. The other explanation could be whatever that treasure is, it is actually kept in a vault completely made from the radioactive Jade as a means of protecting it. Both of these could be explanations as to why Dofi needed the Opi Opi no Mi and immortality. Being immortal, he could safely retrieve the treasure for himself and take it away. This could also be the reason why Law's devil fruit among all of the mythical devil fruits is the one with the ridiculous 5 billion berry price tag. Now, just like the end of Kuma's flashback, the end of Egghead is fast approaching, and after that, we are more than likely going to Elbaf. But what then? After we're done there, we have no clear goal aside from Lodestar or Laughdale, and our next destination could very well be another island based on ancient mythology, the place we were teased about over 2 decades ago, the Emerald City. I don't know about you guys, but to me that sounds exactly like something Oda would do. But even if we don't go there, I'm certain that in the future, especially as we get closer and closer to the end of the story and the big war with the world government, we will uncover all of the mysteries of the Celestial Dragons, their suits, their sacred treasure. It is definitely all connected, and I believe the thing that will tie them all together is Jade, the same stone that is connected to Julie Bonnie, who is definitely going with the Straw Hats into the next arc and possibly the end of the story.